In the heart of Lagos, where the city never truly sleeps, where the streets are alive with the constant hum of car horns, the laughter of children playing, and the chatter of traders calling out their wares, there lived a young woman named Ada. Lagos was a city of contradictions. Dreams were born and crushed in the same breath. Wealthy men in their sleek cars sped past struggling hawkers, and skyscrapers cast shadows over broken-down stalls. In this restless city, Ada stood out. She was strikingly beautiful, tall, with a curvy frame that made heads turn wherever she walked. Her skin glowed, and her eyes, sharp, confident, and full of quiet fire, had a way of commanding attention. Men turned to steal glances, whispering among themselves. Women noticed her too, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with envy, because Ada was the kind of woman who seemed destined for greatness. But beauty was not her only gift. Ada carried herself with grace, with the quiet dignity of a woman who knew she was meant for more. Yet like every human, she had her weakness. Ada loved deeply. Too deeply, some would say. She gave her heart recklessly, without holding anything back. And it was this very love that would test her, break her, and in the end, shape her destiny. Her heart was captured by a man named Chike. Chike was the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about. Smooth-talking, charming, with promises sweeter than honey. His voice alone could disarm you, and his smile had a way of making lies sound like the truth. When he looked at Ada, he told her she was his queen, his future, his everything. And Ada believed him. Blinded by love, she poured everything she had into him. When Chike was in debt, Ada was there to pay. When his wardrobe needed an upgrade, she clothed him in fine suits. When his business ideas came up, she sold her late father's land, her inheritance, to fund his so-called dreams. Her friends watched and shook their heads. They warned her. "Ada, shine your eyes. Love no day blind you so," they said. But Ada only laughed them off. With the boldness of someone convinced she had found her destiny, she replied, "He is my destiny. Chike is the man God sent to me." And so, she continued to give, to sacrifice, to believe. But love, when placed in the wrong hands, can become a weapon. One rainy night everything changed. The city was drenched, the streets flooded, and thunder cracked across the sky. Ada waited for Chike. She called, she texted, but there was no reply. She paced the floor of her small apartment, her heart pounding with worry. Midnight came, then 2 in the morning, and still there was no sign of him. By dawn, a hollow dread had settled inside her chest. Days passed. No calls, no text, no visits. Chike had vanished, like smoke carried away by the wind. Weeks later, the truth arrived, carried by whispers that grew louder and louder until Ada could no longer ignore them. Chike had not disappeared into thin air. No. He had traveled to Abuja. And there, under the bright lights of a lavish ceremony, Chike had married another woman. Not just any woman. A wealthy, plump lady, draped in lace and gold, surrounded by guests who cheered as if it were a fairy tale. And the money that funded that fairy tale. The very money Ada had sacrificed. Her inheritance, her sweat, her love. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than any wound on the flesh. It was a wound to the heart, to the soul. Ada felt her world crumble. For days she shut herself in. Curtains drawn, phone switched off. She cried until there were no more tears left to cry. Nights were long, filled with silence that screamed louder than any noise. She asked herself over and over again, how could he do this? How could love betray me so cruelly? Her friends came knocking, urging her to move on. But Ada's heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces, and moving on felt impossible. Then, one evening, something shifted. Ada stood before her mirror. Her eyes were swollen from days of tears, her face pale from sleepless nights. She hardly recognized herself. But somewhere in that reflection, in the brokenness, a voice rose within her. Quiet but firm, it whispered, "I am not broken. I am not finished." She tied her hair into a ponytail, wiped her tears, and stood tall. That moment became the turning point. Ada decided to rebuild. With the little savings she had left, she returned to school. She enrolled in a diploma program in business, determined to sharpen her mind and build herself anew. It was not easy. There were days she wanted to give up, days when the weight of betrayal threatened to crush her spirit. But each time, she remembered the words she had spoken to her reflection. I am not finished. After completing her diploma, Ada started small. She launched a modest fashion line, sewing designs from her tiny apartment. First, people doubted her. Neighbors whispered that she was wasting her time, that she would never rise again. Some mocked her, asking if this was what came out of loving too much. But Ada ignored them. She poured her energy into her work. Stitch by stitch, design by design, she built something beautiful. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Influencers stumbled upon her designs and started to wear them. Orders came in, small at first, then steadily growing. Her clothes caught the eye of celebrities, and before long, Ada was no longer the girl broken by love. She was Ada, the fashion entrepreneur, one of Lagos's most sought-after designers. Her name carried weight. Her brand spoke for itself. And the same city that once whispered about her heartbreak now celebrated her strength. Years later, Ada was invited to speak at a women's empowerment event. The hall was filled with women from all walks of life. Young girls searching for hope, mothers looking for courage, entrepreneurs seeking inspiration. Ada took the stage, her head held high, her voice steady. As she began to speak, her eyes wandered across the crowd. And then she froze. There, seated quietly among the audience, was Chike. Time had not been kind to him. His expensive suit could not hide the sunken eyes, the tired lines etched into his face, the weariness of a man who had squandered all he had. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. Chike looked away in shame. Ada felt no anger, no bitterness, only a quiet strength. She smiled, lifted the microphone, and spoke words that echoed through the hall. A woman's worth is not in how much she gives to a man, but in how much she believes in herself. The hall erupted in applause. Women stood, clapping, cheering, inspired not just by her words but by her journey. Ada's story was no longer one of heartbreak. It was one of resilience, of strength, of rising from the ashes. Moral of the story. Glowing star, never pour yourself empty for someone who cannot fill you back. Glowing star, true strength lies in self-belief. Glowing star, and sometimes heartbreak is the fire that forges destiny.